Welcome to The Current by TreasureCoast.com, where we discuss interesting people, places, and happenings on Florida's Treasure Coast.
Well, James, I appreciate you being on. I'm excited to talk with you. Why don't we start by you just telling the people who you are?
I'm a South Florida native, born and raised my entire life down in South Florida. Myself in Broward, my wife in Miami-Dade County. We now live in the Panhandle, and I'm a business owner. I'm a proud Christian, constitutional conservative, proud conservationist. I entered this race really for three reasons: to fight back against the urban sprawl and overdevelopment that has taken over large parts of our state, specifically to stop the data center invasion. And then last, but certainly not least, to make life more affordable. There was a study that came out earlier this year that nearly half of Floridians had seriously considered leaving our state because they could no longer afford to stay here. And it's crazy to me that in the greatest state in the country, people who made it great would feel that they have to leave because insurance or HOA or property tax keeps going up. So I'm fighting to bring down cost and to bring my business world experience to be able to do that.
And I appreciate that thought. I know affordability is top of mind to a lot of people. And I know that's a big thing, about your campaign is wanting to address that affordability. Is that the number one thing that you see facing Floridians? And what are some things that you see as top of mind to tackle that?
Well, I think affordability, it oftentimes people say that and really don't know what they mean, right? Anybody can say that word affordability. What do we actually mean? I mean three things when I say affordability. Number one, insurance is in a crisis in Florida. 15 firms have left our state in recent years. And Josh, when 15 pizza places leave a place, guess what? The remaining pizza places can charge whatever they want because there's fewer competitors. That's economics 101. I was an economics major in college. And so what I can tell you is that we have a crisis on our hand where insurance companies have left, fraud has skyrocketed, and the remaining insurance companies think that they can get away with whatever they want, including and especially denying legitimate claims left, right, and center. And so my view is bring down insurance premiums, whether it's auto, property, or healthcare. Tackle the fraud that in many cases has led premiums higher, led firms to leave, and also enshrine your right to get paid out on a reasonable timeline. You should not have to hunt down and hire a lawyer to be able to get your insurance claim paid out. So that's part of it. Another part of it is property taxes. In the last 5 years, statewide property tax revenue is up 76%. They are collecting 76% more today than they were 5 years ago. Are your roads in the Treasure Coast 76% better? Are your schools 76% better? We sure as heck aren't paying police officers, firefighters, our teachers 76% more. So forgive me, but where did the money go? That's a $20 billion increase is what the 76 represents. And guess what? It only cost $18 billion to make sure that no Florida homestead resident ever pays a property tax bill again. And so there is a way to deliver the largest tax cut for young couples, for working families, and our seniors, while also preserving essential services. I believe it is a combo of getting to the bottom of where this money went, eliminating the waste, fraud, and foolishness, streamlining government while protecting police, fire, paramedics, schools, and infrastructure. We also may have to raise a statewide tourism tax. I'm the only candidate proposing that. We are blessed to have 140 million annual tourists, many of whom visit the Treasure Coast every single year. They rent a car, they get on a cruise, they check into a hotel, they fly into our airports. Why don't we collect a nominal fee when they do something that is related to tourism? And I think we could collectively raise, wait for it, $6 to $7 billion actually, wow. Because 140 million times 50 gets you right in that ballpark. And I think you can, in fact, raise about $50 on average. And to anyone who would say, well, if we raise $50 per tourist, they might not come. It is 7 degrees in New York City, and it's 75 degrees on the Treasure Coast. They are still going to come. And I think this is a great way for us to be able to deliver this large tax cut for Florida families. The last thing I'll say, it might seem small, but it isn't. We need to eliminate tolls for Florida residents. And we can, in fact, do that. And the way I propose doing that is very, very simple. Raise the tolls on out-of-state drivers and tourists. Raise them just by a bit. And with that extra savings, we are able to make sure that no Florida resident has to pay to drive on our roads ever again.
I appreciate you putting all that out there. And, that brings up a couple of follow-up questions that I think might be interesting, because I know homestead and property tax, that is something that people are talking about a lot around Florida right now. Amendment 3 is coming up. What do you think you would do differently than what is coming up in Amendment 3? And I also, I know that you also have, I think it was kind of like I think you're calling it like the Mamdani tax, where if somebody buys a secondary residence in Florida, there's some sort of fee affiliated with that. I imagine that would also be part of the plan to pay for some of these other additional things, right?
That's right. I'll talk to the Mamdani tax first and foremost. Look, if you want to come to Florida and make this your full-time residence, if you want to bring your family and you want to commit, start a business, hire people, become one with Florida, great. But if you want to buy a second or third or a fourth home here to speculate, so let it sit idle 10, 11 months out of the year so you can come vacationing, I suggest you stay at a hotel and not take housing supply off the market in the midst of the worst housing shortage in Florida history. And so what I propose is a tax that would collect revenue from out-of-state residents seeking to buy a second or third vacation or rental property in Florida. We don't need that right now. And I think that a smart tax, a dynamic tax, is a way to be able to mitigate that. But to your first point, Amendment 3 is not what Governor DeSantis wanted it to be. It is a watered down version that did not provide essential protections for local governments. And so while I'll probably vote for Amendment 3, I don't think it'll pass because Governor DeSantis has said he won't be actively campaigning for it. There's still a lot of uncertainty. I think it captures the essence of what needs to get done. But as always, Josh, the devil is in the details. We need a plan that says two things: deliver the largest tax cut for Florida families who are being crushed by the weight of this cost of living crisis. And number two, protect the very services that those families rely on, so we don't cut their taxes in one place and then effectively raise their taxes in another by saying that police and fire and schools are now going to lose quality. I believe we can do both. Do I believe that Amendment 3 is that solution? No, not necessarily. Realistically, I don't think it's going to pass, in large part because the governor said he's not going to campaign for it because it's not his particular plan. But I do think we're going to be able to get this back on the ballot in 28. I don't think there's anybody in the state who's happy about their property tax bill. And if that were the simple referendum is, are you happy about your property tax bill? It would get 0% support. But what people are worried about, and rightly so, is how are we going to cover essential services? What they don't want to see is them be able to save $4 or $5 grand a year, but then call 911 and it take 3 or 4 times longer. They don't want to be able to save $4 or $5 grand a year, but their 4 or 5 kids go to a public school that no longer meets their standards. And so we need to be able to do this. We have to be able to do this, but it's going to take a little bit of time. And I am running on a plan to be able to do that and also to be able to sell that plan. I mean, you need someone who's going to formulate the plan, but also sit with all stakeholders, not just people in my own party, but even Democrats as well, city commissioners, county commissions, sheriffs, police chiefs, teachers, school board members. I believe every single voice needs to be at this table if we are going to do this. And that has just not been the case with Amendment 3. And that's why the governor and I are not out there publicly supporting it.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, because I know that there was a lot of talk about it being rewritten, or it had to be rewritten. I think a judge had ordered it to be rewritten a couple times, as early as just a few months ago, maybe. But I also appreciate you bringing up the teachers, because I know that that's another thing that is a part of your platform, is trying to bring, Florida teachers are, I think, as many people know at this point, one of, if not the lowest paid in the nation. I know that's part of your platform, is trying to bring that up there. Is this all part of that plan? Does that fit into some of the other ways to bring the income in? Does that cover the teacher pay as well?
It does. And what I've said is that it is unacceptable that we are ranked dead last in teacher pay. No wonder we struggle to retain the best teachers that we have. I was a public school kid from kindergarten all the way to graduation. And I can tell you that public school teachers are what drives student success in our schools. I'm a business owner. If I want to retain and recruit great talent in my business, I've got to pay people what's fair. I've got to treat them respectfully. I don't want to get them enmeshed in the middle of political battles. And so every teacher in Florida should know that I am fighting for them to get a 25% permanent pay increase, not a one-time bonus, not a one-off, not something that's going to disappear in a year, but a 25% permanent bonus that thereafter will be indexed to inflation. I'm doing it not just because teachers deserve it. I'm doing it because students deserve great teachers. And the only way to have great teachers is to pay them what they are worth. Now, let's be honest. Is every teacher in Florida going to meet that standard? No. Is it 80, 90%? Of course. I'll tell you where the real struggle right now in public education is the number of bureaucrats who are breathing down teachers' necks, the number of administrators who spend all day behind a computer and don't spend time in the classroom. They make $200,000, $300,000 a year, while our teachers are barely scraping by at 40 to 50 grand. And so there's ways, yes, to raise the money needed, in large part by laying off a lot of the bureaucratic administrators who just aren't moving the needle and in fact are being counterproductive because they're not teaching and they're trying to micromanage a classroom in a way that doesn't really benefit the teacher. And so 25% pay raise, go to my website, fishback2026.com. You'll see exactly how we fund all of this, but I'll summarize it this way. No new taxes for Florida residents. Now, I hope no one faults me for trying to charge Mark Zuckerberg $5 million for buying a $170 million home, the most expensive single-family home sale in the entirety of our state. I hope no one faults me for charging a little bit more to tourists. I hope no one faults me for having the Sun Pass charge $8 for tourists as opposed to $2. But my commitment is to never raise taxes on my fellow Floridians. If that means raising revenue from investors from outside the state, by all means, but we have an opportunity to do something extraordinary, and that's what I'm fighting to do.
You know, while we're talking about the education in the schools, I know part of it may have been maybe your small business platform or supporting entrepreneurs. I think it was like an incubator idea, small business incubator for entrepreneurship. Do you want to talk about that? And I'm sure that can lead into other things. You know, I know part of it was, it goes down to even like filing fees, I think, for small businesses.
That's exactly right, Josh. And let me just say that I'm a small business guy. I was an entrepreneur in my 20s, was able to build a great business, and I meet young entrepreneurs every single day as I've crisscrossed my state and visited all 67 counties. Small businesses are struggling right now. And as President Reagan said, government is not the solution. Government is the problem. Filing fees, regulation, burdensome paperwork, all of it. The inability to compete with some of the largest companies because the legislature has created an entirely separate regulatory framework that overburdens small businesses. So I'll be the first governor to really take an axe to the regulations, to the filing fees, to the reports, to all of it that slows down small businesses, and also open up private capital to Florida-based small businesses, create real incentives for businesses to get started here in Florida, whether that's a landscaping business, an HVAC business, a food truck, whatever it may be. I think Florida entrepreneurs have a right to be able to grow in our state. And right now, too much of it is the government getting in the way. I'm a small government guy. I'm a liberty-minded guy. And what I want to see is government get out of the way to prevent the kind of occupational licensing, to prevent the kind of paperwork, regulation, filing fees that prevent so many small businesses from getting started in the first place. I mean, think how many small businesses in the Treasure Coast have never been started because the filing fees were too high, the paperwork was too much, and the regulations were too burdensome. Now, this doesn't just matter for entrepreneurs. Again, like everything, I'm not just doing it for one group of people. I'm doing it for everyone, because the more businesses that start as a result of us getting rid of regulation, the more competition there is. And the more competition there is, the lower prices will be. And so if we are serious about affordability, We are serious about creating more competition in our communities with small businesses that act as a check and balance to price gouging, to price increases, and to predatory behavior. I don't believe that government can solve these things. I believe government can get out of the way to be able to let the free market and small businesses solve these problems.
And I think I appreciate you kind of elaborating on a lot of that, because I know that for a lot of people, the American dream, starting a business, or just making an honest living, be able to make their way into home ownership, that's something to a lot of young Americans, it feels almost unattainable. And not to kind of go backwards too much, but I know part of the home ownership and affordability plan for you was, stopping institutional purchasing. And I think part of it was a down payment assistance program for some of these. I mean, would it be worth touching on some of that real quick before we probably move on to some of the other things?
It would be. I don't believe in free money. I don't believe in handouts, but I believe that young couples right now are staring down a generational crisis, which is that they may never be able to buy a home. And so I propose a one-time $10,000 zero interest. It's not free money, so it's not inflationary. Zero interest down payment loan to help young couples buy a home. Now, is that going to solve all problems? No, but it's a right first step. What we have to do is we have to tackle the vacation rentals, the Airbnbs, the short-term rentals. Blackstone and BlackRock collectively now own 117,000 single-family homes across our state. That's 117,000 homes that a teacher, a firefighter, a nurse, a corrections officer, a service member, a small business owner, a barber cannot own in our state. When Wall Street owns our homes, we are not in control. And so what I will do as governor is I will stop the Wall Street buyout of our homes to be able to protect home ownership. And lastly, foreign nationals should not be able to buy single family homes in Florida. And that is a real abomination that a Russian investor, a South American investor, can come in and scoop up 5, 6, 7, 8 homes, while a local teacher, nurse, firefighter, or cop is still struggling to get off of renting and get into buying. And so there's a lot that has to be done. These are common sense solutions. America first means putting Americans first. And I don't think there's anything conservative about letting foreigners prevent our ability to conserve our neighborhoods for Americans and Floridians of all walks of life. Again, I'm the only one being honest about what these problems are. My opponents will talk about building affordable housing. We don't want affordable housing. We know what affordable housing looks and feels and sounds like, because you can hear the sounds of the street very easily through those crappy wooden walls. Affordable housing is code word for Section 8 style sheds, where the houses are about 7 feet from each other. We don't want affordable housing. We want to make housing affordable. And that is what I'm running to do. And we can only do that if we create a down payment assistance loan, if we get Wall Street out of the home buying program, if we bring down the all-in purchase of owning a home, which includes the lifetime property tax, which includes the lifetime property insurance. And last but certainly not least, you have to eliminate the fact that you have foreign nationals who can scoop up homes and contribute to this generational housing crisis.
That might be a good segue into another question I had regarding, and speaking of the workforce, speaking of maybe immigration or people from other countries. I know you have a stance on the H-1B visa program, and I think a lot of people now have talked about TPS. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? How do you balance something like immigration? How do you protect the Florida workforce? I mean, what would be your stance on all this?
My stance, first and foremost, is I feel for people who feel impoverished or are not safe in their home countries. I think that we should pray for them. I think that we should help in any way that we can so they can get back on their feet. But I don't think that having people leave their homelands where their language, their heritage, their ancestors link back to, I don't think that having them simply come to the Treasure Coast or where I grew up in South Florida or where my wife and I now live in the Panhandle, and having them start up here is good for them or good for us. Floridians right now are being crushed, and we are not helping ourselves by letting in the entire world. I think what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris did was unforgivable by letting 10 million people into our country. I think we need to be smart about immigration. I think there's an illegal immigration problem, but I don't think it's a 74-year-old grandmother who's been here for 25 years and has yet to commit a crime except overstaying her visa or entering the country illegally. I think we need to be common sense about immigration, never allow an illegal to have access to amnesty or taxpayer money or ever be able to vote or gain citizenship. But I'm not going to be first in line to round up people who have been here for 20 or 30 years and have no real negative impact on the community. Is there a long-term plan with them? I think we'll have to get to that. But I think right here, right now, we have to keep our immigration focus on sex traffickers, drug traffickers, violent criminals who actively pose a threat to our community, many of whom came when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris unleashed this on our country. What I will say about H-1B workers, which is a foreign immigration program that allows companies in Florida, 1,900 right now, to import foreign workers from the Middle East, from South Asia, from East Asia to come and take our jobs. Now, why do they do this? They do this because they want to save money. That is not a legitimate excuse to fire a mom of 4 from Amazon, from FedEx, or from UPS. All 3 companies, by the way, use H-1B labor here in Florida. To fire a mom of 4 from the Treasure Coast and say, you know, you did a good job, but we found somebody from Calcutta or Mumbai to do it for $5,000 or $10,000 cheaper. That is not going to be accepted when I am governor. I'm going to end the H-1B scam, and I'm going to do that despite it being a federal program. I'm going to do that by instituting a dynamic corporate fine that disincentivizes companies from doing this by eliminating the cost savings that they would gain by employing H-1B labor. And so, crazy idea. Florida jobs are for Floridians, not for foreigners. And if we want to address the affordability crisis, we have to help people keep and get great paying jobs. Because if you don't have a great paying job, then quite literally everything is unaffordable. And so that is going to be my plan. I believe that our nation has benefited from immigration. My mother is a legal immigrant to the United States from Colombia. I grew up in these communities. I grew up visiting South America. I grew up speaking Spanish and English. But what I can tell you is that at some point, we have to look ourselves in the mirror and be honest. We are full. And until we can take care of our own, we are not in the position of taking care of anyone else.
You know, that's so I think we should also tackle things like growth. I know data centers are a big part of your platform. That's something that's, you know, just been like one of the headline issues. You know, I think on two sides of the coin would be, how do you balance growth in Florida in any area of the state or in many different facets while maintaining that quality of life? And how do you stop things like, let's say, data centers that might be going into, we see them really trying to go into more rural and quaint areas of the state, which it almost seems, they don't seem to really know much about the area. It seems like a good place to maybe put a data center. But I'm interested to hear your point of view on all the above.
Well, look, they're not trying to put a data center next to the Ritz-Carlton or the Four Seasons. They're not trying to put a data center next to some of the richest neighborhoods. They're trying to take advantage of people and take advantage of our land. And I'll tell you, old Florida is disappearing. I grew up in South Florida. I grew up next to citrus groves. My granddad was a cattle rancher. I grew up going to Lake Okeechobee and spending time with my uncle and my dad in the Everglades. And so I'm in this race because I fear that we are losing the Florida that we love. And now is not a time to regulate data centers. Now is not a time to reform data centers. Now is a time to stop data centers before it is too late. Because if we don't stop them, they will destroy our land. They will raise our electric bills. They will worsen the drought. They will jeopardize our water supply, and they will plummet property values all over Florida. Can you imagine them building a data center a mile or two from your own neighborhood? What that would do to your property value, knowing what we know about data centers? No one is going to want to live there. No one's going to ever want to buy your home. Your home is going to drop 30 to 45% in value. And that is just the beginning of what it's going to do for our community. I am the only candidate who, when I got into this race on November 24th, 2025, in my announcement video, I said, I am running to stop data centers in Florida. I said it before it was popular. I said it before, it was cool because I had done extensive research on the risks that these had posed. And at a time when Florida is already so overdeveloped, when the growth is out of control, the last thing that we should do is build a 2 million square foot facility that will raise our electric bills, hurt our water supply, and drop our property values.
And I appreciate you bringing up, the water supply in Lake Okeechobee. I know conservation and things like that are top of mind. That's something that you're running on is kind of that conservation aspect, I think, is really near and dear to a lot of people right now who want their great grandkids to grow up in a Florida that they themselves would recognize. So I'm interested, is there anything else when it comes to water quality or conservation that you feel is worth pointing out?
3 letters, FWC. The FWC is not living up to their mandate, and their mandate is conservation. It is not to be in the pocket of property developers. And so I'll tell you right now, they are straying from their mission. As Florida governor, I would have the opportunity to appoint 4 new FWC commissioners next year and remake that board and the entire trajectory of that organization. Not the rank and file. Those guys are doing good. But the leadership, the commission is where we see big problems. And that is contributing to the overdevelopment and the lack of protection for our wildlife, for our land, for our water, and for our air. And so my commitment is very simple. Appoint good conservationists, biologists, people who believe in the promise of old Florida to the FWC next year. I have the sole ability to do that as Florida governor, and I will do it without apology because I'll always put conservation ahead of development or growth.
I appreciate that. I wanted to, I just realized we're at like 26 minutes. I wanted to make sure before we wrapped up, I was kind of really surprised I hadn't seen this before, but on your website, you have kind of like a contract that's notarized with Florida and the Florida residents. I was just kind of interested to see that. Do you want to talk about what that is, what that means for you, for your campaign, for Florida residents?
To the surprise of no one, politicians lie. And no, it's not just the Democrats. It's many in my own party, the Republicans. And so I'm a business guy. In the business world, I've signed thousands of contracts. President Reagan said it best, trust, but verify. And so I signed this contract with a very specific purpose. If I break any of my promises to Florida, I cannot legally run for re-election in 2030. And those promises run from data centers to Second Amendment to First Amendment to health freedom, no vaccine mandates, no lockdowns, to never trading stocks while in office and never taking money from AIPAC, CARE, or any foreign organization. And so that is my commitment to Florida. I think the days of politicians telling us to trust me, bro, those days are over. I'm proud to be the only candidate in this race and the only candidate in Florida history to actually sign a legally binding contract with voters. And I did it for a very simple reason. I believe that you should be able to hold me accountable if I ever let you down.
I appreciate that, James. And before we wrap up, is there anything that you feel like we didn't touch on that we should have? And, I'm interested also to hear, just kind of maybe as a broad level, what do you hope to see if you look back 20 years from now, 30 years from now, what's the Florida that you hope to look at?
It will be an extraordinary success if the future of Florida in 30 years looks like the past of Florida of 30 years ago. And people often ask, what is the future of Florida? What is it? The future of Florida is in our past. In the 1990s, we were the ag capital, the citrus capital, the cattle capital. In the 1990s, you could afford a home and get married by the age of 30. In the 1990s, you could raise a family on a single income if you so chose. In the 1990s, we didn't have crazy overdevelopment. We didn't have a Dollar General next to a Dollar Tree, next to a Family Dollar, next to a KFC, next to a Popeyes, next to a Burger King, next to a Mickey D's. In the 1990s, our parents and grandparents could retire with dignity. In the 1990s, we understood that our air and our water and our land was for preserving, not for property development. And so I don't think Florida needs to do anything other than get back to our literal roots instead of plundering the roots of our wild and free land. I think we need to revive the literal roots of our land and get back to the Florida that we know and love. I don't want to be anything that we aren't. I'm going to be honest. We are not the financial capital of the world. We are not the data center capital of the world. We aspire to be neither of those things. We have an aviation and aerospace capital. We can be citrus and ag and capital and leisure and hospitality. We can do all of those things. But let's not be New York. Let's not try to be New York. Let's just try to be the Florida that we've always been. And if we do that, that will be an extraordinary accomplishment. And that is what I'm running to do. Proud Republican, proud fourth generation Floridian, business owner, husband, soon to be father. And on August 18th, I'm asking everyone to vote for Fishback in the Republican primary for governor.
I appreciate that so much. And where can people learn about you if you want to drop maybe socials, website, anything like that?
Well, I'm going to give them two. I'm going to give them the website, which is fishback2026.com. And I'm going to also give everyone my personal email, which I've been responding to like crazy. We get 1,000 emails a day. It is insane. I'm backlogged, but you have my word. You will hear back from me before August 17th. You can write me a personal email at james@fishback2026.com. I will answer it because I believe that if you want to be able to trust me, I have to make myself accessible to you.
Awesome, James. Well, hey, look, I appreciate you being on. It was awesome talking with you. And it was good to hear more about where you stand. And I hope that people will listen and make the decision for themselves.
I appreciate it, Joss.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Current by TreasureCoast.com. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Follow us on social media or visit TreasureCoast.com for local events, tips, and news. Have a guest or topic you'd love to hear on the show? Let us know at TreasureCoast.com. Until next time, keep riding the current and enjoying everything the Treasure Coast has to offer. See you soon.